Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. I'm Lorianne Farrell, the director of the Tufts Poetry Awards program at Claremont Graduate University. And it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to the 24th annual Kingsley and Kate Tufts Poetry Awards ceremony. Now, in an article published last week in, of all places, the magazine Inside Philanthropy, a writer named Mike Scutari concluded a sincerely congratulatory piece about our very own Tufts Awards by writing, actually rather poetically, and I quote, "Sometimes, just sometimes, when the stars align, it actually pays to be a poet." His words made me think of everything I have ever heard about the redoubtable Kate Tufts, the widow of Kingsley and the very quotable creator of these awards. She is, after all, the person who said, with admirable understatement and pragmatism, that a Tufts Award should, and I quote, enable a poet to work on his or her craft for a while, without paying bills. Those two words, for a while, are the most important part of that sentence and point to a singularity of our purpose that goes well beyond justly extravagant remuneration. The Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award and the Kate Tufts Discovery Award are, in a very real sense, investments in the future of poetry. They represent our abiding interest in supporting the ongoing lives of poets, poets at the very beginning of their writing careers with much more to say, and poets at mid-career who have no intention of piping down. These are meant to be stepping stones, not tombstones, in the words of one previous winner, Tom Slay. And their cultivating effect is meant to work to best advantage between first flower and final bloom, in the words of a previous director of these awards, Patricia Easton. For most of all, Kate Tufts wanted poetry and poets to flourish. And we like to think she chose Claremont Graduate University as a home for these extraordinarily generous awards, the world's largest monetary prize for a single collection of poetry, and the only major poetry prizes awarded on the West Coast. Because she knew that we here at CGU would always and also recognize the real value of poetry in a world badly in need of well-wrought words. Now, we have our former president, John McGuire, to thank for having the vision and the good sense to pick up the phone when Kate called him to inquire about setting up a poetry award in honor of her husband a quarter century or so ago. This year, as always, we strive to honor the sacred trust Kate Tufts placed in this university, in poetry, and in poets to transform the world. And it's nice to be able to say that, I hope, with Kate's grandnephew, Dan Clement, in this audience, or at least at dinner tonight. Dan, are you here? We'll see him at dinner. Now, Ross Gay may be less abashed than I, but he can hardly be more grateful to the following people, a few of whom will be sharing this dais in a moment. I'll begin with my university. I want to thank our president, Bob Schultz, who unfortunately cannot be with us, for his support of the arts and humanities here at CGU, and our Dean of Arts and Humanities, Tammy Schneider, for possessing vast reserves of emotional energy that keep us all on our toes. For all their assistance in keeping Tufts in the news, I am grateful to Rod Levesque, who wrangles our media and communications, and to Brock Rustin and Rachel Ty Morrison for bringing us finally into the 21st century with their fabulous blog posts about our awards and our poets. I want to thank my immediate directorial predecessor, Wendy Martin, for handing off on such a well-run operation. And especially, I want to thank the intrepid and unflappable Genevieve Kaplan, poet, teacher, and Tufts coordinator, who, along with her indefatigable crew of busy work-study apprentices, is really the person who made this day possible. And with that, I want to move on to thank our judges, many of whom are able to be here today. Of the annual, hopeful submission of poetry books, there is seemingly no end. This year's preliminary judges can surely attest to that. Charged with screening more than 425 books of poetry, distilling these into 60-plus books to send on to the final judges, these distinguished poets were truly on the front lines of language in the summer and fall of 2015. The chair of this committee was Joshua Clover, professor at UC Davis, whose poems have appeared in 3 editions of Best American Poetry, and whose articles have appeared in 2 editions of Best Music Writing. His first book of poetry won the Walt Whitman Award in 1996. Joshua was joined by Allison Joseph, professor at University of Illinois at Carbondale, editor-in-chief of Crab Orchard Review, and an award-winning poet whose most recent collection of poetry was My Father's Kites, published by Steel Toe Books. And Lynn Thompson, alumna of Scripps College, professor at UCLA, and a much anthologized poet, the author of Beg No Pardon, published by Perugia Press. Allison and Lynn, would you please, I was going to say join me up here for a moment, but did not realize they were going to give us these dangerous traps of stairs meant to actually reduce the world of poets. So I want to be careful. We can reduce the world of me, but we can't reduce of you. So I'm actually coming down to you with a present for and a sort of a show of sincere admiration for your work for us this year. Yes, clap.
Thank you so much.
Every year, I understand they make this room more interesting. Excuse me. Now, I will let the chair of the finals judges speak in detail to that experience. But I do want to thank them all for their service, although I will save my introduction of and thanks to the chair of that committee, Chase Twitchell, for just a bit later. Here now, however, I would like to thank Stephen Burt, professor of poetry at Harvard and author, most recently, of Close Calls with Nonsense, published by Grey Wolf Press. Stephen will be cycling off the finals committee this year, and I'm only sorry he won't hear you clap for him right now. Remaining on the Judges Committee will be Brian Kim Steffens, professor at UCLA, critic and poet, whose most recent collection, Viva Miscegenation, was published recently by Make Now Books. He could not be with us today. But Elena Karina Byrne and Don Scher are here. Elena Byrne is a poet, visual artist, and poetry consultant for the LA Times Festivals of Books. Widely anthologized and with at least 2 books forthcoming, she also won the Pushcart Prize for her poem, Berryman's Concordance Against This Silence. Let's thank her. Don Scher has been editor of Poetry Magazine since 2013. His most recent collection of poetry, Wishbone, was published in 2012, and his critical edition of the poetry of Basil Bunting is due out soon from Faber and Faber. I'm also delighted to announce that Don has graciously agreed to serve as chair of this committee starting next year. So applause for his bravery. I will introduce the current chair of the judging committee, Chase Twitchell, in a few minutes, but first would like to ask the Dean of the School of Arts and Humanities to come to the dais and offer a few words of welcome. Tammy Schneider.
Thank you. And I always have to write these comments before I actually get to meet the poets, which feels bad. So I wish I could add to them, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. All right, so all the deans at Claremont Graduate University are invited to make a presentation during the Board of Trustees meeting. We are usually allowed 5 minutes at the most, it's usually cut down to 3, to show 3 slides that summarize the exciting things happening in our schools. Our last board meeting was in early March, literally the day after we had called this year's winners and announced the award publicly. The best slide I showed had the beautiful orange background, which you can see out in the hallway, with pictures of Kingsley Tufts, Ross Gay, and Ross's book cover on one side, and pictures of Kate Tufts, Danez Smith, and Danez's cover on the other. Ross is looking down, wearing a grin, which I'm sure we'll see, or probably already have, and Danez is looking up, face alit, with what looks like sheer joy. The book covers of both winners are bursting with bright colors, just as the streets of Claremont were prior to today's rain, and probably will be again tomorrow. Just looking at that picture makes people happy. And we had that picture up in the hallway of the School of Arts and Humanities for the last month, publicizing today. That slide, such a relatively simple thing, somehow managed to capture, with a few images and splashes of color, so many of the wonderful aspects of the Tufts Poetry Awards. For starters, the award recognizes great poets, not only with an impressive line on their CV, but as Inside Philanthropy, apparently our new favorite journal, pointed out, with money. At the Association of Writers and Writing Programs conference in LA last week, many of the past winners talked to our awards director, Lorianne Farrell, about the great things their winnings allowed them to go on and accomplish. These awards are intended to help poets reach their full promise and potential, and it means a lot to us to be a chapter in the stories of their success. And then there are the many colors on the slide. This year's winners, as have many of our past poets, address difficult topics facing society, as well as the joy that comes from simply being alive. It's beautiful how poets, especially really good ones, can inspire us to deeply and profoundly reflect upon the world with a few brilliant turns of phrase. They take the same words available to the rest of us and use them with both a delicacy and power that leaves me in awe. That slide also reminds me of the look on the face of Kate Tufts at one of the earliest award ceremonies, back when we only had the Kingsley Tufts Prize, but we had Kate with us. John McGuire, our former CGU president, wave, we keep mentioning you, who brought Kate Tufts to us in the first place, and I think has probably attended every awards ceremony for Tufts since then, was making some comment to Kate. Kate was glowing, somewhat like the expressions on today's winners in their photos. And so today, let's all share in the joy of our poets and revel in the bright color they have brought into our lives. Let's celebrate the ability of our poets to transform words into beauty, and let's pause for a moment of thanks to Kate and Kingsley Tufts, whose generosity gives us the opportunity to witness that transformation.
As I said, folks, reserves of energy. Thank you, Tammy. It is now my honor to introduce the chair of the final judges committee, Chase Twitchell. Chase's collections of poetry include Northern Spy, The Odds, Perdido, The Ghost of Eden, and The Snow Watcher. Robert Pinsky, who himself has served as chairs of this finals committee, described Chase's poems as, quote, full of sharp observation, both of the world and herself, unsentimental poems with a sinewy intellectual toughness. And as her book progresses, they open out into a stark, sometimes bewildered clarity. Horses Where the Answers Should Have Been, New and Select Poems, which was published in 2010, won the Kingsley Tufts Award. And as you see, she became a Tufts judge and chair soon thereafter. Chase has been an absolute mainstay, a great friend to CGU and the Tufts Awards. We will miss her, for this is her final year of service. Please join me in congratulating her on her unstinting service to the Tufts Poetry Award these past 3 years. And also let us welcome her. She's going to be introducing our poets. Thank you, Chase. And there's our Tiffany bag. I know. Thank you so much. Let me get out of your way.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, lovers and supporters of poetry. Thank you for being here on this joyful occasion. People often ask how in the world it's possible for judges of prizes such as the Kate and Kingsley Tufts Awards to reach a consensus. You might imagine that the poets who sit on juries possess some rarefied training, expertise, or erudition that gives us magical powers of literary discrimination. And while it's true that some of us are scholars, and I do not count myself among them, or editors, or teachers, or whatever, what really qualifies us to recognize exceptional work is a lifetime of reading poetry. When I was a kid, I loved the books of Arthur Ransome, a British author who wrote the Swallows and Amazons series. Some of you my age or older may remember them. In one, there was an epigraph by Keats from On First Looking into Chapman's Homer, in which he describes his first encounter with a new translation of the Odyssey. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. I didn't know what ken meant or what a surmise was, but I vividly remember Keats's lines shimmering with drama and beauty, and I understood that it was language that had opened that experience to me. As children, we assume that adults know more than we do about practically everything, so we naturally give them that authority. As we grow up, we come to recognize that genuine authority is in fact quite rare. In poetry, I believe that it begins in a fierce need to know and say what the truth is. And who knows where that comes from? That need demands courage, sometimes even recklessness, stubborn determination, and a particular kind of intelligence that is profoundly sensitive to and inventive with language. The poet's interaction with words must also be open-minded, that is, receptive to words talking back, receptive to the poem taking an unanticipated direction, which allows for the surprise and power of saying what one did not know one knew. Sometimes the writing of a poem forces a complete about-face, a coming to terms with truth that obliterates the previous truth. And this is not an easy thing to withstand, let alone continue to generate in your own life year after year. When all of these qualities converge, the authority of the poet is unmistakable, even in very young poets. Which is how 5 judges, in this year's case with quite radically different aesthetic leanings, managed to come to a consensus. Poets with that kind of authority jump right out of the pile, 1 or 2 or none among the hundreds. So when one appears and we all agree that yes, this is the real deal, this is a book that will teach us something absolutely unique, it's a major thrill. It's my great pleasure today to introduce you to 2 extraordinary poets, Danez Smith and Ross Gay. I'll say just a few words about each before they read, because it's them you've come to hear, not me. First, though, the awarding one after another of the 2 prizes. The winner of the 2016 Kate Tufts Award for a book by, quote, a poet of genuine promise is Danez Smith for Insert Boy, published by Yes Yes Press. Insert Boy is not an easy book, not a pretty book, not a book one would read for distraction or soothing song. On the contrary, these poems pack a dangerous punch, often raw, rough, and sometimes despairing on their surfaces, particularly in regard to issues of gender and race. They are also miraculously tender, a combination that disarmed me again and again and brought me to tears more than once. And trust me, that is a rare event in my life. It's this fierce tenderness which underlies every poem that complicates, interrogates, and ultimately goes beyond the transformation of pain to profound and unexpected consolation. Nervy, surprising, morally urgent, and wholly original, Insert Boy is an unforgettable debut. Danez Smith's work has already won much critical acclaim, including a Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from Poetry Magazine and the Poetry Foundation, fellowships from the McKnight Foundation, Cave Canem, and elsewhere. Danez is a founding member of the multi-genre, multicultural Dark Noise Collective and has been a finalist or winner of a number of Poetry Slam titles. Patricia Smith featured their work in the Academy of American Poets Emerging Writers series. Rumor has it that a second book, Don't Call Us Dead, will soon appear from Grey Wolf Press, and I've already put in my order. Please welcome Danez Smith.
I'm not gonna cry. Thank you, Chase, and the judges. Thank you to the whole CGU staff and to everybody who puts their hands on the Tufts. You just want to write poems, and then a book happens, and then the book happens, and that's already more than enough. And so this is just extra blessings on top of extra blessings, and I'm very humbled and honored to be here with y'all. Thank you. And just want to say the name, Catherine Sullivan, the editor of Yes Yes Books. She couldn't be here with us today, but she is a genuine champion for a lot of poets out there. And so I want to just thank her for making this little thing happen. All right, poems. I want to start with a poem. It's up here. I don't get to read it. This is for Dwayne Gully Queen Jones and Isla Nettles, two black transgender women who were murdered in the summer of 2013. This poem is called Genesis. And on the 8th day, God said, "Let there be fears." And that's the story of the first snap. The hand's humble attempt at thunder, a small sky troubled by attitude. And on the 9th day, God said, "Bitch, work." And Adam learned to duck walk, dip, pose, death drop. Eve became the fruit herself, stared the lion in the eye and dared the king to bite. And on the 10th day, God wore a blood red sequin bodysuit, dropped it low, called it a sunset. And on the 11th day, God said, "Girl, come here." And the trees leaned in for gossip, the water went wild for the tea, the air tight with shade. And on the 11th day, or on the 12th day, Jesus wept. Sad so many of his sons would shame his sons for walking a daughter's stride, for the way his children would learn to hate the kids. And on the 13th day, God barely moved. He laid around heaven dreaming of glitter, pleased with the shine of it. Sad so many of his children would come home covered in it. The parades canceled due to a rain of fists and insults and bullets and rope. And on the 14th day, God just didn't know what to do with himself. 2. The Lord begat man. Man begat sin. Sin begat a new joy. A new joy begat hate. Hate begat Leviticus. Leviticus begat Sister Rosa. Sister Rosa begat that ugly rumor about Dwayne, but that ugly rumor begat the truth. But the truth begat the need to pray or run. The need to run begat the knees, and that's a kind of prayer too. But their knees begat his mouth, splattered all over the hymn-colored dirt road. His mouth splattered all over the hymn-colored dirt road. Still begat a song. The song begat a hymn at the sweet boy's funeral. The sweet boy's funeral begat his aunt. Still discussing head shake. His aunts still discussing head shake. Begat the world that killed the knot. A boy child and stole her favorite dress off her cold, shimmering body, and that just can't come from God. Right? 3. A hymn. I am on the battlefield for my Lord, for my Lord. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. And I promise him that I will serve until I die. I am on the battlefield for my Lord. 4. A not him for her. I am the battlefield, my Lord, I battle my Lord, and I promise him that I die. Let's do this one. Okay. Oh no, let's do this one. A failed attempt at creation. I walked around stuffing my pockets with snow from the grooves of tires, the middle of the street and bottom steps. I built a man in my image, gave him a hat, a good pair of loafers, a dime bag, everything I've learned about being black, holy, drunk, my mother's son, not afraid of the gun, and he looked more like stone when I was done. I was so sure he'd see August, but like his maker, he could only fight so long. I'm happy I didn't give him a face. I couldn't look into his eyes. I couldn't hear him scream. To my grandfather's prostate cancer. You awoke dressed as a rose blooming with blades, an untamed garden of tulips and fly traps, sprawled your name across his most untouched, commanded his body to bow and smell your sweet acid, your slow and reckless violence. You bully of the bully, turned a monster into a man, into a boy, into a puddle of want, begging to be held. How did you do it? Replace my grandmother's face with your swell of carnivorous pink matter. Replace the man we knew with the man we knew could be. I will not curse you for proving him delicate. I will not damn you for whisking him away to dance with dirt. But what you took, you gave us 6 years of soft, tinged joy. Hands that could touch without bruising. Oh, sweet sick. I want to kiss you all over your red velvet mouth. Speak all your names back into you. Hot pink undertaker. Hades of the underskin. Tiny knot of mercy. God of growth and rapid weight loss. Impossible hero. Lord of a decaying kingdom. The first time I saw my grandfather hold his wife's hand. The first time his open palm did not demand blood. This is a little sweet poem. I was like looking at this book the other day, because like I'm like working on the second one, so like I rarely look at this one thing, and I was like, what do I read tomorrow? I said I can't read new things. And then I had to realize I didn't think the book had like soft little poems, but I guess there's a couple in there. So I don't think I've ever read the poem out loud. I wrote it while running on a treadmill in Wisconsin. It's called From My Window. You know Lake Mendota still sings under its frozen flesh in January. You know you can't wash a song out. You know the salt boiled out of the dead sea in summer makes some kind of music when it swallows the feet of a couple of kids playing in the sand. No clue one day they will anchor, drown, wade swollen blue to shore. I thought to warn them, but who am I to ruin the best hurt they'll know? What is love without good reason to feel or run? What is a lake if its waves do not hum? What is the skin's saline water if no one is left to savor? What is a song if no one will sing it into an ear they've memorized the taste of? Two more, I think. It's called Dancing in Bed with White Men with Dreads. There's like an invisible epigraph, Audre Lorde, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Audrey, the master's tools brought my house down. I begged him with my own hands. I've been floorboards, wing nuts, and slow blues at his pale, hard feet. His full moon flesh, my new moon flesh, his braided, glued, yarned, unwashed attack against our tentacled blaze is pulled sugar in my mouth. Lord, he doesn't know how long it takes to look the mirror in the eye, love what the world won't. Lord, forgive me for not grabbing the shears the night I let him stay in my bed after he said race wasn't real. Lord, there are brown boys I've never called back, plump, sun-descended men, but none of them made me fail as joyous. None of them so undid my spine, subtle tension. Lord, we just didn't relate past our hued past, and isn't that what uppity people say? Is the new spelling of my name T-O-M. I want to tell you about the president. I don't want to tell you about being Ford and playing with white Barbies, about frat parties in Wisconsin, the fake black bodies they made disco balls, about my rent and the men who paid it for a while, the wrinkling, ghosting bodies, about Chicago and how she bleed, about Brooklyn and who stay there now and still, Lord, his hair. What is your word? He's in my bed, dreads splayed, taking up too much space. Audrey, gravity is pulling me everywhere. I sit on the edge. If I fall, I'm not sure where I'll go. That. Two more poems. That one? No, not that one either. Sorry. Alright, cool. This poem is kind of like a precursor for the next book, I think. The next book does a lot. Some of the similar issues, but it also does a lot with dealing with HIV in life. So this poem is called Raw. I spent all day trying to come up with a metaphor for barebacking. I've tried face against abrupt winter, sockless feet against velvet floors, punching a warm beast with paper skin. None of them work. I don't want to talk about the risk because I don't want to think about risk. Miss me with that chatter about what I already know is wrong. I know the bones I could become. I know the story and the other one too. How people disappeared mid-sentence in the 80s. How NYC became a haunted bowl of dust. I know the monster waiting to pounce my blood, but I wasn't in my right mind. I was barely in my body at all. And then this last one. It's like the last poem I added. It's like the last poem. Actually, this poem is dedicated to you, Ross. Now that I think about it. I wrote this. Yeah, it is. I wrote this after that panel we did at Split This Five with Tim and everybody. Yeah, that was fun. Tim Siebels was talking about the grace of a black man in motion. Great sports and shit. So this is that. It's called On Grace, and I thank you very much for being here today. You know how Usain Bolt runs and you want to cry, it's so beautiful? That. How could we not be a song? I sing this man in my bed all night, my body a loose choir and his body a gospel, and I don't mean like a song, I mean gospel, like a religion or like a testimony etched out in gold. How could we only be a song? I lay men down for what some call me a faggot for, but I call it worship. I see his wood and bark, amen, amen, amen. I call out God's good name in the midst of the first miracle, the black body. Look at him, at us. Were the mountains not named after some dark brother's shoulders? Didn't the wind learn its ways from watching two boys run the spine of a field? Bless the birch-colored body always threatening to grow or burn. Bless the body that strikes fear and pale police and wets the mouths of church girls and choir boys with want. Am I allowed to say that I praise my pastor most without the robe? I found God in the saltiest parts of men, the bottoms of the space between leg and what biology calls a man, the bottoms of feet, life's slow milk. I watch the heat play the Warriors and I'm overcome by a need for tears and teeth. I have to stop playing football because being tackled feels too much like making love. I pause in the middle of the street watching the steady pace of men on corners selling green and all things dangerous and white. I watch the hands exchange money and escape the balancing act of hips and denim, this awful dance of poverty. But the dancers, tatted and callous ballerinas, henna dip stars. Do you know what it means to be that beautiful and still hunted and still alive? Who knows this story but the elephants and the trees? Who says the grace of a black man in motion is not perfect as a tusk in the sun or a single leaf taking its sweet time to the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Danez. That was a knockout. The winner of the 2016 Kingsley Tufts Award for a book by a poet in mid-career is Ross Gay for his book Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, published by the University of Pittsburgh Press. When introducing poetry readings, I make a point of not quoting what other people have said about the poet. But Scott Russell Sanders' blurb on the back of this book is irresistible and deserves repeating. Where did it go? Here, no, I got it. He said, quote, "In this bright book of life, Ross Gay lopes through the whole alphabet of emotions, from anger to zest. Merely considering the letter R, for example." I love that. "These poems are by turn racy, rollicking, reflective, rambunctious, raunchy, and rhapsodic. Praise and lamentation rub shoulders along with elegy and elation, and every page is dazzling." All true. The voice in these poems seems to speak directly into the ear of the reader, alternately urgent and playful, public and intimate. Ross heightens and tinkers with the natural cadences of speech, so that the poems give the illusion of easy spontaneity, though in fact they are meticulously composed and scored on the page. If you were to diagram his sentences, a lost art, you would find some of the most elegant, inventive, and powerful rhetorical music being written today. Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude takes us deep into one man's complex, compassionate celebration of this crazy America we all live in. It's a masterful work by a poet coming fully into the rare power of genuine and hard-won authority. Ross Gay is the author of 2 previous collections, Against Which and Bringing the Shovel Down. Individual poems have appeared in numerous magazines. He's received fellowships from Cave Canem, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the Radcliffe Institute. He's an associate professor of poetry at Indiana University and also teaches in Drew University's low residency MFA program. He's also an extraordinary gardener. It is an honor to introduce the winner of the 2016 Kingsley Tufts Award, Ross Gay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's just remarkable to do this. Like, it feels incredibly lucky. It feels like a gift to have people read your poems, and it feels really lucky. it feels really lucky. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you to all the people also involved with the Kingsley Tufts Prize. Yeah, it means a lot. It means a lot. I'm also like exceedingly ecstatic that Danez's work, that I get to be here with you. You know, yeah, like that's the thing. It's like, you know, I've seen Danez's work for a while, and immediately in poetry, it was the first time I saw it, and was blown away. And I think I had emailed them and was like, hey, I might steal your poem for this novel I'm writing and put it in there. And it's just stunningly beautiful work, and it feels, it feels lucky to be up here with you sharing in this. Yeah. But anyway, I feel tremendous gratitude I feel tremendous gratitude because this book is trying to do something. It's trying to do some kind of adult, complicated joy in the world, and it feels very lucky to have someone listen to that. I'm going to read you 3 poems. The first one is called To the Fig Tree on 9th and Christian Street. Doesn't matter, I can bend over. Yeah, I can bend over, it's easy. To the Fig Tree on 9th and Christian. This is a real place. There's the tree, though they cut it. But it's okay, I think it'll grow back. Tumbling through the city in my mind without once looking up, the racket in the lug work, probably rehearsing some stupid thing I said or did, some crime or other. The city, they say, is a lonely place until, yes, the sound of sweeping and a woman with a broom, beneath which you are now too, the canopy of a fig, its arms pulling the September sun to it. And she has a hose too, and so works hard, rinsing and scrubbing the walk, lest some poor sod slip on the silk of a fig and break his hip and not proudly reach over to gobble up the perpetrator. The light catches the veins in her hands when I ask about the tree. They flutter in the air, and she says, take as much as you can, help me. So I load my pockets and mouth, and she points to the stepladder against the wall to mean more, but I was without a sack, so my meager plunder would have to suffice. And an old woman whom gravity was pulling into the earth loosed one from a low-slung branch, and its eye wept like hers when she dabbed with a kerchief as she cleaved the fig with what remained of her teeth. And soon there were 8 or 9 people gathered beneath the tree, looking into it like a constellation, pointing. Do you see it? And I'm tall. And so good for these things. And a bald man even told me so, when I grabbed 3 or 4 for him, reaching into the giddy throngs of yellow jackets, Sugarstone, which he only pointed to, smiling and rubbing his stomach. I mean, he was really rubbing his stomach, like there was a baby in there. It was hot. His head shone while he offered recipes to the group using words which I couldn't understand. And besides, I was a little tipsy on the dance of the velvety heart rolling in my mouth, pulling me down and down into the oldest countries of my body, where I ate my first fig from the hand of a man who escaped his country by swimming through the night, and maybe never said more than 5 words to me at once, but gave me figs. And a man on his way to work hops twice to reach at last his fig, which he smiles at and calls baby. Come here, baby, he says, and blows a kiss to the tree, which everyone knows cannot grow this far north, being Mediterranean and favoring the rocky, sun-baked soils of Jordan and Sicily. But no one told the fig tree or the immigrants. There's a way the fig tree grows in groves. It wants, it seems, to hold us. Yes, I'm anthropomorphizing, goddammit. I've twice in the last 30 seconds rubbed my sweaty forearm into someone else's sweaty shoulder, gleeful, eating out of each other's hands on Christian Street in Philadelphia, a city like most which has murdered its own people. This is true. We are feeding each other from a tree at the corner of Christian and Ninth. Strangers maybe never again. Thank you. I read this poem. It's a poem from my mother, my dear mother, who, my uncle, my mother's brother is here, so you can tell her that I actually read a poem for her. And you know, a lot of this book, a bit of this book is dealing with my mother and my mother's sadness and my father's death and that sort of, you know, among other things. But this is a poem for my mother, who was deeply sad when my father died in the most beautiful way. Just uncomplicatedly, deeply, unshakably sad, which I admire. It's called Ending, but it terrified me. It's called Ending the Estrangement. And it's the first line of a sentence. Ending the estrangement from my mother's sadness, which was to me unbearable, until it felt to me not like what I thought it felt like to her, and so felt inside myself, like death, like dying, which I would almost have rather done, though adding to her sadness would rather die than do. But by sitting still, like what in fact it was, a form of gratitude, which when last it came, drifted like a meadow lit by torches of cardinal flower, one of whose crimson blooms, when a hummingbird hovered nearby, I slipped into my mouth, thereby coaxing the bird to scrawl on my tongue its heart's frenzy, its fleet nectar-questing song, with whom, with you, dear mother, I now sing along. And this is a longish poem. It's called Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, and it's got two things you need to know. There's other things you need to know. Maybe, I don't know. But there's a kid named Era Lee in this poem who was not a kid yet. Now she's a kid. And there's this thing called the Bloomington Community Orchard, which is a big part of the poems, or the engine of this book. It's one of the many engines of this book. This book, which was written by so many people, by the way, I want to say that. So many people are in this book. And it's a free fruit for all kind of civic imagination, love fest project where we're trying to figure out how to be neighbors to each other, how to work together. There's an acre in Bloomington. It's all fruit trees and it's all fruit bushes, and there's a gate and there's not a lock on the door, and you can just go in there and pick an apple. You know, go in July, you can get all the blackberries you could ever want. Go in September and you can get figs. Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Friends, will you bear with me today, for I have awakened from a dream in which a robin made with its shabby wings a kind of veil, behind which it shimmied and stomped something from the south of Spain, its breast aflare, looking me dead in the eye, from the branch that grew into my window, coochie-cooing my chin. The bird shuffling its little talons left, then right, while the leaves bristled against the plaster wall, two of them drifting onto my blanket, while the bird opened and closed its wings like a matador, giving up on murder, jutting its beak, turning a circle, and flashing again the ruddy bombast of its breast, by which I knew upon waking it was telling me in no uncertain terms to bellow forth the tubas and sousaphones, the whole rusty brass band of gratitude not quite dormant in my belly. It said so in a human voice. Bellow forth! And who among us could ignore such odd and precise counsel? Hear ye! Hear ye, I am here to holler that I have hauled tons, by which I don't mean lots, I mean tons of cow shit, and stood ankle deep in swales of maggots swirling the spent beer grains the brewery man was good enough to dump off, holding his nose, for they smelled very bad. But make the compost ride giddy and lick its lips, twirling dung with my pitchfork again and again with hundreds and hundreds of other people. We dreamt an orchard this way, furrowing our brows and hauling our wheelbarrows and sweating through our shirts. And less than a year later, there was a party at which trees were sunk into the well-fed earth, one of which, a Liberty apple, after being watered in, was tamped by a baby barefoot with a bow hanging in her hair, biting her lip in her joyous work. And friends, this is the realest place I know. It makes me squirm like a worm. I'm so grateful. You could ride your bike there or roller skate. You could catch the bus. There's a fence and a gate twisted by hand. There is a fig tree taller than you. In Indiana, it will make you gasp. It might make you want to stay alive even. Thank you. And thank you for not taking my pal when the engine of his mind dragged him to swig fistfuls of Xanax and a bottle or two of booze. And thank you for taking my own father a few years after his went down. Thank you, Mercy. Mercy, thank you for not smoking meth with your mother. Oh, thank you. Thank you for leaving and for coming back. And thank you for what inside my friend's love bursts like a throng of roadside goldenrod gleaming into the world, likely hauling a shovel with her like one named Airily Ought, with hands big as a horse's, and who, like one named Airily Ought, will laugh time to time till the juice runs from her nose. Oh, thank you for the way a small thing's wail makes the milk, or what once was milk in us, gather into horses huckle-buckling across a field. And thank you, friends, when last spring the hyacinth bells rang and the crocuses flaunted their upturned skirts and a quiet roved the beehive, which when I entered were snugged 2 or 3 fist-sized clutches of bees between the frames, almost clinging to one another. This one's tiny head pushed into another's tiny wing, one's forelegs resting on another's face, the translucent paper of their wings fluttering beneath my breath. And when a few dropped to the frames beneath, honey. And after falling down to cry, everything's glacial shine. And thank you, too. And thanks for the corduroy couch I have put you on. Put your feet up. Here's a light blanket, a pillow, dear ones, for I think this is going to be long. I can't stop my gratitude, which includes, dear reader, you for staying here with me, for moving your lips just so as I speak. Here's a cup of tea. I've spooned honey into it. And thank you, the tiny bee's shadow, perusing these words as I write them. And the way my love talks quietly when in a hive, so quietly, in fact, you cannot hear her, but only notice barely her lips moving in conversation. Thank you, what does not scare her in me, but makes her reach my way. Thank you, the love she is, which hurts sometimes, and the times she misremembered elephants in one of my poems. Here they come, garlanded with morning glory and wisteria blooms, trombones all the way down to the river. Thank you, the quiet in which the river bends around the elephant's solemn trunk, polishing stones, floating on its gentle back, a flock of geese flying overhead. And to the quick and gentle flocking of men, to the old lady falling down on the corner of Fairmount and 18th, holding patiently with the softest parts of their hands her cane and purple hat, gathering for her the contents of her purse and touching her shoulder and elbow. And thank you, the cockeyed basketball court on which, in a half-court 3-on-3, we old heads made of some runny-nosed kids a shambles. And the 61-year-old, after flipping a reverse layup off a backdoor cut from my no-look pass to seal the game, ripped off his shirt and threw punches at the gods and hollered at the kids to admire the pacemaker's scar grinning across his chest. Thank you, the glad accordion's wheeze in the chest. Thank you, the bagpipes. Thank you to the woman barefoot in a gaudy dress for stopping her car in the middle of the road, and the tractor trailer behind her, and the van behind it, whisking a turtle off the road. Thank you, God of gaudy. Thank you, paisley panties. Thank you, the organ up my dress. Thank you, the sheer dress you wore kneeling in my dream at the creek's edge and the light swimming through it. The coy kissing halos into the glassy air. The room in my mind with the blinds drawn where we nearly injured each other, crawling into the shawl of the other's body. And thank you when I just say it plain, fuck each other dumb. And you, again you, for the true kindness it has been for you to remain awake with me like this, nodding time to time, or making that noise, which I take to mean yes. Or, I understand. Or, please go on, but not too long. Or why are you spitting so much? Or easy, tiger, hands to yourself. I'm excitable. I'm sorry. I'm grateful. I just want us to be friends now, forever. Take this bowl of blackberries from the garden. The sun has made them warm. I picked them just for you. I promise I will try to stay on my side of the couch. And thank you, the baggie of dreadlocks I found in a drawer while washing and folding the clothes of our murdered friend. The photo in which his arms slung around the sign to the Trail of Silences. Thank you, the way before he died, he held his hands open to us. For coming back in a waft of incense or in the shape of a boy in another city looking from between his mother's legs. Or disappearing into the stacks after brushing by. For moseying back in dreams where, seeing us lost and scared, he put his hand on our shoulders and pointed us to the chapel across town. And thank you to the man all night long hosing a mist on his early bloomed peach trees so that the hard frost not waste the crop. The ice in his beard and the ghosts lifting from him when the warming sun told him, sleep now. Thank you, the ancestor who loved you before she knew you by smuggling seeds into her braid for the long journey. Who loved you before he knew you by putting a walnut tree in the ground. Who loved you before she knew you by not slaughtering the land. Thank you, who did not bulldoze the ancient grove of dates and olives, who sailed his keys into the ocean and walked softly home, who did not fire, who did not plunge the head into the toilet, who said, stop, don't do that, who lifted some broken someone up, who volunteered the way a plant birth of the reseeding plant is called a volunteer, like the plum tree that marched beside the raised bed in my garden, like the arugula that marched itself between the blueberries, nary a bayonet, nary an army, nary a nation, which usage of the word volunteer familiar to gardeners the wide world made my pal shout, oh, and dance and plunge his knuckles into the lush soil before gobbling 2 strawberries and digging a song from his guitar made from wood from a tree someone probably planted. Thank you. And thank you, Zinnia and Gooseberry, Rebecca and Pawpaw, Ashmead's Kernel, Coxcomb and Scarlet Runner, Feverfew and Lemon Balm. Thank you, Knitbone and Sweetgrass and Sunchoke and False Indigo, whose petals stammered apart by bumblebees. Good Lord, please give me a minute. And Moonglow and Catkid and Crookneck and Painted Tongue and Seed Pod and Johnny Jump Up. Thank you, what in us rackets glad, what glad rackets us. And thank you to this knuckle-headed heart, this pelican heart, this gap-toothed heart flinging open its gaudy maw to the sky. Oh clumsy, oh bumblefucked, oh giddy, oh dumbstruck, oh rickshaw, oh goat, twisting its head at me from my peach tree's highest branch. Balanced, impossibly gobbling the last fruit, its tongue working like an engine, a lone sweet drop tumbling by some miracle into my mouth like the smell of someone I've loved. Heart like an elephant screaming at the bones of its dead. Heart like the lady on the bus dressed head to toe in gold, the sun shivering her shiny boots, singing Erykah Badu to herself, leaning her head against the window. And thank you the way one time my father came back in a dream by plunking the 2 cables beneath my chin like a bass fiddle strings and played me until I woke singing. No kidding, I was singing and smiling. Thank you. Thank you, stumbling into the garden where the Juneberry's flowers had burst open like the bells of French horns. The lily my mother and I planted oozed into the air. The bazillion ants labored in their earthen workshops below, and the collard greens waved in the wind like the sails of ships, and the wasps swam in the mint bloom's viscous swill. And you, again you, dear friends, for hanging tight. I know I can be long-winded sometimes. I want so badly to rub the sponge of gratitude over every single thing, which includes you, which, yes, is awkward. The little suds in your ear, on your scarf there, in your armpit. Soon it will be over, which is exactly what the little girl in my dream said. holding my hand, pointing at the roiling sea and the sky hurtling at us like so many buffalo, who said, "It's much worse than we think, and sooner." To whom I said, "No duh, child of my dreams. What do you think this singing and shuddering is? What this screaming and reaching and dancing and crying is other than loving what every second goes away? Goodbye, I mean to say. And thank you every day." Thank you.
I don't think there's any closing after that. Maybe there's just some remarks, which is that we're having a ceremony and, a book signing and and refreshments out in the lobby. I would also like to ask you to mark your calendars because next year on the 27th of April, we'll be doing this again. And it is going to be the 25th anniversary of the Kingsley Tufts Discovery Award. So it's going to be fun. It'll be very valid. And the last thing I want to do is ask Danez to check his phone because the last time he was checking it right before we started, he won another prize. So I want to make sure. Who knows what those phones are telling? So turn those phones on, both Ross and Danez. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.